In December 2010, 12 Marine Commandos and additional personnel with the French Special Forces conducted a mission to capture a Taliban facilitator. During that mission, one of the commandos is killed, and up till this point, they had carried out 23 operations and arrested 10 or so Taliban facilitators. This is Operation HK-35.
The 36 men and women cautiously begin their advance on foot. They'll walk for an hour before reaching the village housing the facilitator.
We start to infiltrate the zone and notice someone on the roof with a telephone. We don't know if he's seen us.
The detachment has been spotted by a lookout. He reports their presence, and a few minutes later, a burst of gunfire breaks out.
This is in 2010. When I was in Afghanistan in 2011 to 2012, I know at a certain point, soldiers or troops were able to engage people that were spotting on patrols during certain situations. But when I was there, you had to get authorization in order to be able to engage individuals that were spotting patrols. Maybe that's because people were being killed that maybe didn't need to be killed. Whatever the case was, not saying they could have done that here because they may not have had time to, plus that would have compromised their position, and that's probably not something that they were interested in doing one way or the other.
We'd almost reached our target when the lead group came under sudden attack.
They're about 500 meters in front of us. They fire non-stop at us for about 5 or 10 minutes. We see RPGs pass over our heads.
We had no idea where it was coming from. Bullets were ricocheting over our heads, mud was flying off the compound houses.
Slide told me to prepare a change of direction to bypass the enemy, to attack from a different angle.
The group has to act quickly to try and surprise the enemy by attacking it on another front. The Taliban's strong point is their mobility.
I'm at the head of the group with Gigi, and 100 meters in front of us, we see armed men running towards us.
We sheltered behind a wall as we ran alongside it. We could hear the bullets hitting it, so we protected ourselves.
After an hour-long exchange of gunfire, the valley becomes calm again. The commandos regroup and continue their mission.
I received the order to continue my mission to capture the facilitator. He's in one of the compound houses, about 200 or 300 meters away from the zone.
So for an hour, they were engaged in a gunfight, and they're continuing on with the mission, which of course makes it even more dangerous because obviously everybody that's an enemy fighter in this area knows that they are there.
They finally spot the target house.
We make our way up to the house. I open the door.
We rush inside and quickly search the premises. The facilitator's here, together with weapons and telephones. He puts up no resistance. We capture him.
So we thought, well, we have our bad guy. We're interrogating him, and we're no doubt going to take him with us, so everything's good.
I go up onto one of the roofs with Jonathan. The rest of the group is inside the house. From up there, we spot some men concealed behind the bushes and small hillocks. They start advancing toward us little by little. We see 2, then 3, then 4, then 5 men. And that's when it starts. They open fire on us.
We were very surprised by the intensity and rapidity of the attack. We knew then that the opposing force here was stronger than we'd initially envisaged.
So we immediately requested Tiger backup.
Given the large number of Taliban in the zone, the command sends out 2 heavily armed Tiger helicopters to back up the commandos who've retreated inside the house.
The Tiger positions itself about 5 meters above us. It clears the whole sector.
And it's thanks to these drones deployed in the zone that the command post spots a suspicious movement. 2 Taliban making their way alone towards a house.
So they had these drones up, I guess, pretty much the entire time, which is an obvious advantage because they're only able to see so far throughout the area in which they're working, and the drone is able to relay them the most valuable information that they could possibly want or need at that time, which is where are the enemy fighters and what are they doing exactly. And basically what you're going to see here is that this drone catches these 2 individuals running back to a compound. And instead of kind of pulling out because they have accomplished their mission, they decide to proceed further along here and go after these two individuals.
They spotted two isolated rebels heading towards another house. It was situated about 500 meters south of the initial target house.
So the objective was to go and check out these two men who'd separated from the group. Our first thought was that they could be leaders because they were totally autonomous, which was unusual because the rebels normally stay grouped together. I gave the orders to go to this other compound house to check out the two men who'd gone inside. I knew they were still in there because I hadn't seen them come out. So the objective was to go and grab them and hold on to them, whatever it took.
These two men who have just discreetly gone into this house changed the course of the mission. The Commandos are 600 meters south of this compound. Tanguy gives them the go-ahead to capture these suspected Taliban leaders. But it's up to the on-site commando unit to decide whether they're capable of capturing them.
So we decided to go inside this second house, where movement had been detected via our drones. And now this becomes a priority for us.
So we reorganize ourselves, and the Penfen group leads the way to the new target house.
It's midnight when the Commandos arrive outside the house where the two Taliban are hiding. For them, it's already been 4 hours since the operation began.
So basically, up until this point, they've been engaged in two very lengthy gun battles with enemy insurgents. And I presume, based on what you'll kind of see going throughout here, this drone footage, that they didn't go through these alleyways and down these roads to get to this house. They probably went on the outside of the village and then came in from the side, only because going through the center obviously opens you up to more angles and more areas of opportunity to be ambushed, to be engaged, and it's just kind of impossible to cover all of those things. Whereas if you kind of go along the outskirts of the village and arrive on the side of the building, you're able to basically keep everything in front of you as you're getting information overhead from the drone.
I'm the first to arrive at the house. I put my hand on the door and realized that it's open.
We thought it was a bit strange. It was like they were inviting us to come in.
Sprite makes the decision to throw in a grenade. So we open the door, throw in the grenade, and for us, that's the starting point.
I will say that something that they kind of go back and forth on is I believe they're calling a flashbang a grenade, because it doesn't really make sense necessarily to just throw a grenade inside of a house where you saw two people running in, because there could be women and children, which is something that they go in and discover. So you'll hear them talk about a grenade often, but I believe that they're actually referring to it as a diversionary device or a flashbang.
Once they're inside the house, I'm blind. I can just see the immediate vicinity, but I have no clear visual on what's going on inside.
The inside of the house is quite vast. In fact, it's twice the size of the first target house.
It's a complex building. There are arrow slits, several entrances, a roof, an upper level with windows, and all around there are high points from which they could attack us.
The atmosphere was strangely calm and quiet. It didn't feel right.
It was almost too calm, in fact, and this made us increase our vigilance.
The 12 Treble Commandos start exploring the house. Divided up into small groups of 4, they carefully search every part of the building.
One of the things that you're going to hear me talk about on this channel frequently, and you're going to hear me talk about here, is kind of speed, surprise, violence of action, that methodology, how that actually plays out. You know, one of the things that a friend of mine said to me in the podcast, Israeli Special Forces guy said, you know, what's supposed to happen is dynamic entry. What never happens is dynamic entry. And a lot of times you see that being the case, but I'm going to point out many reasons why, you know, kind of going fast and loud probably wouldn't have been a beneficial idea here in this situation, which really isn't what they do. And I believe they actually minimize their collateral or their own damage, their own KIA, their own wounded by taking a methodical approach like they do here.
Me, Jonathan, Boo-Boo, and Steph are at the rear. We go up a staircase to the immediate right of the entrance and arrive in the first room.
And inside are some women and children. And what's unusual again here is that in all the operations we've carried out, the women and children never cry, whereas here, we come in and they're all crying.
We don't know who's who. There are children, adults, women. We need to rapidly identify all the occupants of this house.
Amongst the inhabitants, two men quickly draw the attention of the commandos.
Two individuals stand out from the others. They're old enough to fight. They're dressed in dark clothes. They have mud on them, but no weapons.
So they're dressed in dark clothes. They have mud on them. Obviously, they are kind of around midnight at this point, I believe. So, you know, it's not uncommon in Afghanistan for them to not be clean. They work in the fields and they live in these villages, so they are going to be relatively dirty. But obviously, mud could indicate that they were just running away from fighting them previously. And the significance of the women and children kind of crying or screaming, you would think, okay, well, now that's kind of a compromising situation. We've been compromised because we were trying to be covert. But you remember that they threw what I believe is a diversionary device when they made entry into the house. So as soon as they did that, they were compromised, which means anybody in the house that didn't know they were there knows that they are there now.
We immediately sense that these two guys aren't villagers. We sense something's going on.
With extra vigilance, Sly's men continue searching the house room by room.
Sly says to me, "Steph, can you take the upper floor?" "Okay, no problem," I say.
There were two ways of accessing the rooms on the upper floor, via the inside spiral staircase or by the outside steps in the courtyard. I decided to take the outside steps, leaving some of my men on the spiral staircase.
Sly, Steph,
Deciding to do that, take that initial approach through the outside staircase and hold on the spiral staircase is a good idea, because obviously as you're approaching a spiral staircase, it's a very compromising position to be in. You can't see around the very corner that you're approaching until you're right on top of it. And so taking the path of least resistance where you can see more as you're approaching and kind of collapse down what you can see as you're kind of getting to the top of those stairs is the better decision to make, at least initially.
and Sprite reach the upper floor via a ladder in the courtyard. On the landing, they stop in front of a room.
It was too weird. The room didn't feel right to me at all.
We felt very uneasy. There were holes and windows everywhere. It was pitch black. We noticed some large glazed openings.
So we break a window, throw in a stun grenade. We open the door, and inside this room, there was another closed door.
We quickly examine the door, and on the top of it, we find two metal contactors fitted with electrical wires. What's more,
So they're examining the door and they find two wires that are connected to one another, making them believe that it's booby-trapped, which again, you know, I talked about a little bit earlier, speed, surprise, violence of action. That wouldn't really work out in your favor in this case, because if you're moving so fast that you're not able to see these things, well, then you kind of end everything way sooner than you probably hope to be ending everything.
there was no handle on this door, nothing.
The door was booby-trapped.
Sly's group is blocked outside this door, whereas on the ground floor, a second group is getting ready to join them via the spiral staircase.
The assault column gets into position, and we start climbing the stairs. Jonathan is at the head, followed by Boo-Boo, Rudy, and me.
We start climbing the stairs slowly and cautiously in the usual way. I'm right behind Jonathan. We arrive on the last 2 or 3 steps, and Jonathan halts the column. I peer through his legs to see what's going on. There's a corridor, and at the end of it, 2 or 3 meters away, There's a room with a half-open door through which we see a circle of light. We realize then that the commander, their leader, is upstairs.
So a piece that I actually took out of here to try and shorten this up as best as I could, even though it's still pretty long, was that they were intel briefing the two gentlemen, or not gentlemen, but probably Taliban guys that were downstairs, and they kept saying what they thought were saying commando, commando, but they realized as the commandos were reaching the top of the stairs that they were saying commander, commander. And so they actually tried to halt the guys at the top of the stairs before they could go up, realizing that the commanders were up there. I don't know what they would have done after that, knowing that they were up there. But they were unable to halt the guys before they actually started taking action up there.
So I turn around. I try to call back the men on the spiral staircase.
Matt tries to stop the assault column, but he's too late. Jonathan and his group are already on the landing.
So we throw a grenade into the room. It explodes.
Now that looked like an actual grenade. Maybe you couldn't see the other ones because it was downstairs, and from this imaging here, maybe you wouldn't see that flash, but this looks to be more like an actual grenade.
And we get ready to charge into the room. But at the top of the stairs, there's a recess on the right. And there's a Taliban there with his Kalashnikov aimed directly at Jonathan. And he's ready to fire.
Bam, bam, bam. What the hell is this? Bam, bam, bam.
I hear a burst of Kalashnikov fire, and from the sounds of it, it's very close. It's coming from inside the house.
A long burst of gunfire comes from the room opposite us, the one with a half-open door. And the Taliban inside there empties his magazine at us.
In front of us, we have two rebels who know how to fight and who are determined to fight to the death.
I'd take 2 or 3 bullets in my bulletproof vest, 2 more in my arm. I drop to the ground behind Jonathan. I get up again, 1 or 2 seconds later, and what I see then is Jonathan falling forward.
It's very rapid and very violent because the firing comes in bursts and at very close range.
The bullets that hit my vest cause the ammunition in my magazines to explode in a sort of halo. What saves me, in fact, is that I fall on the stairs. The men pull me down as best they can, because the staircase is very narrow. They pull me through their legs. I roll down the stairs, like a ball of paper somebody throws away.
I grab hold of Boo Boo, I pull him down the stairs, and he says to me, "I'm okay, I'm going back up." "No, Boo Boo," I say, "what's going on?" I pound.
So we have 2 commandos that at least reach the top of the spiral staircase. I assume they had more guys that were coming behind them. They see the room that they're about to assault. They throw a grenade, and they, I presume, follow the grenade up into the room. That speed, surprise, and violence of action. And there happened to be the standard there waiting for them, which was a bad guy with a gun actually ready to hurt them. And I guess the way they make it sound is the grenade went into the room, but this individual was actually not in the room. He was kind of off to the right in another space, and they didn't see him, or whatever the case was. The first commando gets hit, falls forward. The second commando gets hit in his vest, and the ammunition on his vest explodes, causing him to fall backwards on the spiral staircase. And so just, you know, in this instance, did speed, surprise, and violence of action work, right? And oftentimes what ends up happening, even in law enforcement, is we use tactics, techniques, whatever the case is, and we validate the effectiveness of the techniques based off of somebody who is going to surrender no matter what method that you used. And oftentimes when the standard exists, which is a bad guy with a gun waiting to hurt you, things don't actually go the way that you intend for them to go.
"No, Boo Boo," I say, "what's going on?" I palpate him and realize that he has a bullet wound in his arm.
Boo Boo is taken to shelter to receive treatment. The commandos gradually realize that one of their men is missing.
So we were missing one, Jonathan.
So Jonathan was still up there. I didn't know if he was badly wounded, if the rebels were holding him hostage.
Is he still alive, or is he dead?
Rudy and Gigi decide to go back up the spiral staircase to get Jonathan.
We go up the stairs, and in a bend in the wall, there was a sort of opening, a window. Rudy finds himself about 30 centimeters away from the rebel's gun barrel. He had a reflex action that saved both our lives. He sidesteps, there's a burst of gunfire. We're stunned by the close-range blast. I lose my balance, I fall. I think Rudy's dead because I saw the bullet impacts behind his head. But then I see him jump up and move, so I know he's okay.
You know, in a lot of these cases, and really kind of what ends up happening in most instances where the standard exists and he's actually fighting you and making it difficult for you to do the things that you want to do, it's not, hey, let's just run in there, right? Let's just run in there and hit our pods, because yes, we want to get to our guy. We want to save him. We want to do everything we can to bring him home. But at the same time, we don't want to continue to drop guys in the doorway because we're utilizing bad tactics. And what you're going to see as the video plays on is what we often use to solve problems like this is unorthodox methods outside of that typical CQB training environment that they don't actually usually teach you, or that most people are familiar with learning.
I realized that we can't use the stairs anymore. They're out. So I leave one man at the bottom, another one a bit further up as backup, and I tell them, don't move from there. We're going to try something else.
Outside the house, the fighting continues. Still on the first floor, Sprite and Sly decide to go up onto the roof. They're going to try and find a way into the room where Jonathan's being held.
I go quickly up onto the roof, and I see there's a trapdoor there.
He tells me by radio, Sly, there's a trap door here. I climb up a small ladder onto the roof. Bullets were whistling in all directions. I heard a RPG-7 grenade land in the street below. It was apocalyptic.
I tell Sly I'm going to open the trapdoor to see what's going on in there.
On the roof, intent on opening the trap door, Sly and Sprite totally disregard the fact that they're being targeted.
I open the trapdoor. A burst of gunfire just misses my head.
You know, in the previous videos that I've done, I talked about CQB being constant pressure, right? And sometimes that constant pressure is coming from what most would consider a defensive posture or a defensive position. But if I'm sitting there holding on an angle, or I'm holding on a door where I know the guy to be, and maybe you're just waiting for him to kind of show himself so you can take a shot, we are still applying constant pressure in a CQB environment. These two guys are up on the roof and they are applying pressure by doing something else, while you also have the commandos on the inside that are also holding on these other doors.
I put my head inside the trapdoor to see who's firing, and I try to neutralize the threat. I can see Jonathan's body on the floor with the rebels standing at the side of him. I fire. I hit him. I inform Sly that I think one of the rebels has been neutralized. And I say, John's down there on the floor in front of me. We have to go and get him.
I was stunned. I got up, I looked through the trapdoor and saw Strong's body. It's just not possible, I said to myself. Then the firing brought me back to my senses, and I heard my partner's voice saying that he wanted to go down there to get him. I can still hear him shouting, "We've got to go in. We've got to go down there." "No, don't go down there," I say. And right at that moment, another burst of gunfire comes out of the trapdoor.
Typically in Afghanistan, these buildings are made out of really thick layers of mud and clay, and unless you have some big caliber round like a 50 cal, rounds just don't go through those walls, And so kind of looking at this, it almost makes it look like you're looking at maybe a tin roof or maybe even a typical building that you might find in urban construction, but that's most likely not the case because of where they are in this remote region of Afghanistan.
I pay no attention to what's going on around me. I know there's a combat taking place because I hear exchanges of fire everywhere.
The drone images reveal that the two men remained under enemy fire for 8 long minutes.
I didn't notice the bullet impacts. It's Sly who told me they're firing at us. They're firing at us. So Sly and I opened fire. We try to neutralize the threat, and the situation on the roof is so extreme that he says, we have to get down from the roof. We'll be killed if we stay up here.
But Sprite can't resign himself to abandoning Jonathan.
So I jump off the roof. I see Sly leaving too. And me, I jump off the roof because we're under attack from all sides.
The situation worsens. The detachment is now under attack from both inside and outside the house.
From that point, there's firing from all directions. From the north, from the south, we're surrounded. About 60 Taliban are heading towards you, we're told. We're trapped.
As the 60 or so Taliban get dangerously close, the Commandos realize that this human wave attack is commanded by the 2 Taliban leaders holed up in the house.
Our 2 men are in radio contact with their groups outside. We quickly...
Something that most people that were in the military that were overseas will tell you is almost always the number of enemy fighters is conflated. And, you know, he did say that's what we were told. He obviously isn't seeing this, and none of the aerial footage actually shows more of the battle space. It's more focused on this house. And so, you know, was it 60? Maybe, maybe not. But they also have an element attached to the Commandos that are outside, and they never really talk about themselves engaging these Taliban fighters that are converging on them. There are RPGs that you can see that are obviously coming at the building, but you'll see here kind of towards the end, once they neutralize the Taliban leaders that are inside, basically they just sort of saying like, well, the gunfire stopped and they were able to just kind of leave, you know, extract in a helicopter, which just kind of find it, just that part just a little bit odd.
quickly realize that they've been called in to come and rescue them.
It's been half an hour now since Jonathan got hit. He has to be rescued quickly. They have to act quickly. To try and rescue Jonathan, they're going to attempt to get through the door on the first floor, which has been diffused but is still locked.
I go up to the door. I kick a hole in the door. Shots are immediately fired from behind the door. I move back. I wait. Then I lie down on the floor to try to get a wider angle through the hole to see what's going on behind it, to see if I can see Jonathan and the rebels, to get an idea of the room.
So this is really interesting because is this something that you've ever been taught to do in a CQB environment? No, it's not. When I was in the Marine Corps, we would kind of do these things all the time, not really get in the prone. I don't really remember getting in the prone inside of a structure. Very situational thing that you're just like in the moment, hey, this is what I have, this is what I need to do. Definitely remember taking a knee a lot. And then when I went into law enforcement and was able to get onto a team and being taught CQB and kind of running scenarios, and I would take a knee like at the corner of a hallway, and I would be corrected not to do that, although I was never told why it was a bad idea. I think doing some of these unorthodox things when they come up and they're appropriate can actually, you know, provide you some tactical advantage, because most people, if they're firing at places where they believe people are, they're probably not firing towards the ground.
I fire.
Shots are fired at us through the door, through the wall. We know that the rebels are in the next room, so it's an extremely close-range combat.
The door gives way, and we see John's body laying on the floor, about 4 or 5 meters in front of us, but we can't get to him.
The rebel in front of us was firing. He had Jonathan's weapons too now, so he had twice as much ammunition.
He was experienced. He knew how to fight. He fired at us through the arrow slits in the courtyard. He fired at the door. He threw grenades at us. He wanted to do battle.
Despite several attempts and negotiations, the two Taliban leaders refuse to give in. Outside, the commandos are cornered on all sides. They have to move quickly.
So I think everybody has this idea of what they're going to do in this situation and, oh, I'm just going to get in there. And when you're taking sustained gunfire from people that are ready and waiting for you and know what they're doing, it's not that we still don't want to get in there. The question becomes, does it make sense? Are there other things that we could be doing to minimize the amount of people that we lose in this situation? Because if we just start sending people into this room and now we have 2, 3 people that are down in the room and now I can't get to them because I was 3rd or 4th in the stack and there was so much gunfire coming from the doorway that I just couldn't get in there. That becomes a even bigger problem now that we have to solve.
The Taliban are getting closer and closer.
I can still hear the radio message. We can't hold out much longer.
We were in a tight situation because once we realized that the enemy was approaching on the outside too, we knew that we had to get him out of there as fast as possible.
There was so much firing coming at us from all sides. I thought to myself, okay, we're not going to make it this time. It's over.
Jonathan has been in the hands of the Taliban for an hour now. Sly decides to move into action and sets up an assault column.
The situation isn't good at all. We have someone inside a room, presumably with the 2 Taliban holed up in there. We have the assault column behind us, and we don't know what the situation is for the commando unit on the inside.
We're ready to go in. Ludo pulls the pin out of his defensive grenade, and at the same time, I hear through the radio, Sly, have you tried using the dog? So I say, okay, stand by. Ludo puts the pin back in. I move off to the side and radio back. What do you mean, the dog?
I had a sudden flash, because I'd already worked with dogs. So I called the section chief and said, get the dog.
Tanguy has the idea of using Apache, Antoine's dog, to create a diversion with the Taliban just before the commandos launch the assault. Sly has the difficult task of asking Antoine if he's willing to sacrifice his dog.
I said to him, look, we risk losing your dog. He replied, human lives are at stake here. This guy, he impressed me.
Through these few words, your dog risks being killed, I knew what the situation was. I was able to spend a few minutes with my dog.
So I find it interesting that they even asked him, to be honest with you. I think we do that in law enforcement too sometimes. Seems like we put a major emphasis on the lives of animals than we do humans sometimes. And obviously we don't want our animals or our, officers or soldiers or Marines or commandos to be hurt or killed. But if it has to be an animal or a human, I'm going to choose the animal every single time. I thought it was interesting that they said that he spent a few minutes with the dog. Maybe he's just saying that. Maybe it was a couple seconds, because I kind of feel like, we don't have a whole lot of time to be kind of like talking to the dog about this, spending time with the dog on this. And then you have, you'll see here in a second, they basically say like everybody in the platoon or whoever was on the outside had a moment with the dog to talk, like, say goodbye to the dog or whatever. And I just feel like that's kind of more time added to the clock that we don't necessarily need.
I unharnessed him. He'd already understood.
Everyone came over to stroke and kiss the dog, which was then handed over to the special forces.
Apache is taken into the room on the first floor. This dog, trained only to search for explosives and not to attack, now has to be reconditioned in just a few minutes. Antoine asks the commandos to incite the Taliban to start firing in order to stimulate the dog.
So the dog...
So I will defer to you guys on this. I have experience with dogs that are primarily used to sniff for bombs, which is what I was exposed to in Afghanistan. We had a dog on our team, and then I've also been exposed to dogs that are trained to bite people, like in law enforcement. And my experience has been those two dogs are not the same, and they will not act necessarily the same. And to be able to recondition a dog in a few minutes to do something he's maybe never done, and I don't know that's necessarily the case here, but it does seem like an odd thing to be able to get a dog to understand how to do that in that situation. So the dog maybe had been like cross-trained kind of, basically. But it's not like you can tell the dog to do something they've never done before and he's going to go in there and do it. Again, I'll defer to you guys if you have any information on that, if that sounds feasible or how that might work. Let me know about that in the comment section.
Dog starts to get worked up, excited. And so we wait 5 or 10 minutes more, and then the dog handler says, "Okay, my dog's ready."
Once the dog's led inside the room, we have just a fraction of a second to act. It's now or never.
I see Fred pass in front of me and go into the room. I follow behind him. We have to step over Jonathan.
I come into the room and find myself face to face with the rebel. The dog's clamped onto the man's leg, and the rebel still has his AK in his hand. He doesn't drop it. I neutralize him.
I come in through the door behind him. I take on the second rebel. The two rebels are neutralized.
Again, this is an unorthodox solution to a problem that you have to find outside of what is typically trained in CQB with hitting your pods and understanding your angles and things like that. And something I say frequently is winning or losing is more than likely going to come down to where you're standing and why you're standing there, the decisions that you make that put yourself in that situation. And a lot of times to solve the problem, it's going to come down to making tactical decisions, making decisions that are outside of the box.
In the inside courtyard, Sprite, Matt, and of course Junior, the nurse, discover Jonathan's state.
You can see that it's too late.
They did everything they could to try to save the commando, but they were unsuccessful at doing that. Everybody inside the compound and then on the outside was able to get to an extraction location away from the compound, call in a helicopter, get on that helicopter, and get out of there. I'm sure from a decision-making perspective, for the ones that made that decision or agreed to kind of push further into the village to go after these two people that they saw running away after they already got the person that they went there to capture, probably ate up at these guys for a little bit. But even the commando that went down, I'm sure, well, he was a part of it right before it ever happened, and he was willing and wanting to go after these guys too. I'm sure just kind of from a psychological perspective that probably ate up at some of those guys on the team, thinking like maybe we shouldn't have done that. Let me know what your opinion is about that in the comment section. Also, if you have any other further information you'd like to add to this video, you can also put that in the comment section. You can subscribe to this channel by tapping on this photo. Make sure you're liking this video if you do like it, and make sure you're feeding the algorithm down below.